Hi there, Maria Bartholdi. I'm with two-time Pro Tour top aider Pierre Dagen playing mono green Stompy. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I wanted to talk about, first, you have somebody you want to thank for this deck, right?
Yeah, that's very important to me. That is Emmanuel Gashensen. So he was not in the lead, but in the race for Constructed Master before this Pro Tour. And he's been working on the deck for about 3 weeks, tuning it, posting great results with it. And I was not interested at all. I worked on a completely different deck the whole week. And 2 hours before decklist submission, I decided that my deck was definitely not good enough. And I trust Emmanuel much more than I do myself for Constructed. So I just played his entire deck. I copied his 75. And then he taught me how to play them. So that's the story of the deck, and it's like, all the credit to him and none to me.
Wow, 2 hours before the deadline. Talk about cutting it close.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the deck here. Some of your first creatures, Llanowar Elves, Resilient Kenra, and Servant of the Conduit. So you got some elves here to help you ramp out Servant of the Conduit as well. Tell me a little bit about these creatures.
Yeah, so Llanowar Elves is basically the best card in the deck. Like whenever you get an acceleration on turn 1, you can pump out some of your best cards as soon as turn 2, and you get an insane amount of pressure. Kenra is a great 2-drop because it's both aggressive, it has some staying power thanks to Eternalize, and the boost in power lets him crew Heart of Kiran the turn he comes into play, and helps you power up a Ghalta much earlier than you should. Servant of the Conduit is kind of a newer card for the deck, like most mono-green Stompy do not play this card. The good thing about him is that he has 2 toughness, so he doesn't die to Chainwheeler, which I think is a huge deal. And the deck can also use a little bit of both acceleration and fixing. Since we actually splash blue in our version, the extra fixing is welcome.
All right, let's take a look at a god and some other creatures here. We have a Ronas in the deck, Steel Leaf Champion, and Thrashing Brontodon. So Steel Leaf, I mean, a 5/4 on turn 3 doesn't get much better than that.
Like, he's the only reason why the deck exists. Like, he's insanely powerful. I believe he's quite probably the most powerful creature you can be casting right now in Standard. He's very powerful on turn 3. It's obviously like kind of a 2-card combo with Llanowar Elves. But even later in the game, he's great. Doesn't get blocked by 2/3 Death Touchers, and there are a lot of them in the format, so that's very important as well. Also works well with Ronas, since he lets Ronas attack without having anything to do about it.
And Thrashing Brontodon, a lot of decks are packing that this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, he has a decent body, and the ability to destroy mostly artifacts is quite relevant because of Heart of Kiran and other cards like this. And also, it's not every day, but sometimes you will still play against Godpharaoh's Gift, and having a main deck answer to their combo is pretty good, obviously.
All right, let's take a look at one of your big payoffs here, Ghalta, Primal Hunger.
I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than this, right? Well, the card is obviously very powerful. It's actually quite hard to kill because it doesn't die to any of the red removals, and even the black removals, that it doesn't die to Fatal Push, it doesn't die also to Cast Down, which is super relevant. So basically you need 4 mana to be able to get rid of Ghalta, and this deck can actually cast him on turn 3. So if you get even 12 points, I mean, 1 attack for 12 is usually enough for them to just scoop them up.
What's your turn 3 Ghalta play?
So you need to go Llanowar Elf on turn 1. Then turn 2, there are a bunch of ways you can do it. One of them is turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion. And then on turn 3, you play an extra land, so you have 4 mana. You cast Resilient Kenra, and that puts you up to 10 power. And you cast a Ghalta for 2. And that feels really good.
Another dinosaur here, Territorial Allosaurus. What does this card do in the deck?
Okay, it's not... it's obviously not as strong as Ghalta because it's a 5/5 and it's a 12 threat, right? But Allosaurus has a pretty big body, like it's very cheap, so you can pump him turn 3, and he blocks almost everything you need to block. Obviously, does not die at all to Goblin Chainwheeler, like he doesn't care about Chainwheeler one bit. And the kicker ability is quite good in our version because with Llanowar Elf and Servant of the Conduit, we can actually get to 7 mana. I'm not going to say all the time, but in most of the games. And he's big enough to fight with most other creatures in Standard and kill them.
And 1 copy of Virtuous Gearhulk.
Yeah, just some extra power, good card all around.
All right, let's take a look at your vehicles in this deck. Some dinos getting behind the wheel, maybe Heart of Kiran, and 1 copy of Sky Sovereign Consul Flagship.
Heart of Kiran is a pretty powerful drop, and this deck has a very easy time crewing it because you play so many big guys. It is also a way to play around Settle the Wreckage, kinda, and mostly Fumigate, which is a very annoying card to play against without it. Sky Sovereign is more of a mid-range card that lets you grind game against decks like black-red mid-range, I'm going to call. That's the kind of decks. So both of them like immune to Fumigate, very hard to kill, except when you have a Brontodon, obviously, and very easy to crew.
All right, let's talk about the card that makes this deck, in quotation marks, mono green monsters, commit to memory. Okay, what does this card do?
So
here?
this is what the big finding that Emmanuel had on the deck, and I think it's super relevant. Actually, mono green is a very powerful deck by itself. Like it's fast, it's explosive. The two problem cards are Settle the Wreckage, because, well, obviously when they cast it, you lose if you don't play around it, and Scarab God. And we were looking for a card that would handle both cards, and I think Commit is the only card that does it in the format, because you can counter Settle the Wreckage, you turn you attack with everything, like you attack with 10 power, they go Settle the Wreckage, you commit, and you instantly win. And you can save some time from a Scarab God, which could be enough to just win the game.
Adventurous Impulse is a 2-of in your deck, as well as Blossoming Defense, which is 3 copies. A couple of people running Adventurous Impulse. How has this helped the deck out here?
I would say it makes your deck a little bit more consistent, basically. Like, you don't want to play too many lands, but you still want to make sure to hit your mana. So this is like half land, half future. You almost never fizzle on this, obviously, in this deck. So it just makes the deck more consistent. And
all right.
Blossoming Defense is just play around removal, obviously.
Let's take a look at your lands pretty quickly here. Ether Hub, Botanical Sanctum, Hinterland Harbor, and one more slide of lands. Just a forest and a Hashep Oasis in your deck as well. Anything special there?
Well, Oasis is like, it's free to play in this deck. Like, you don't pay, sometimes you pay 1 life to cast something, that's not a big deal. And giving +3/+3 is fairly relevant, especially when you have a lot of evasive guys like Steel Leaf Champion, Trample guys, and Heart of Kirin.
Awesome deck, really cool addition with blue. So thanks to Emmanuel Gershenson and Pierre Dagen for showing this off. Mono green Stompy.